Join MSNBC for a very special presentation, The Marriage of Prince Edward and Sophie Rhys-Jones. Live coverage begins this morning at 11 Eastern on MSNBC.
It is, of course, not a royal wedding until the royalty arrives, but the commoners came in the thousands to Windsor Castle to cheer the royal family. The groom and his older brothers broke with tradition, arriving not by car, but on foot, a sign of the modern monarchy for Princes Charles, Andrew, and Edward mingling with the crowd. Their grandmother, the Queen Mum, always with a smile, the most popular member of the royal family for much of this century. She is as old as the century itself, turning 99 this year. The Queen and the Duke of Edinburgh, Edward, is the last of their children to get married. Like many mothers of the groom, the Queen wore lavender and pearls. And this was our first glimpse of the bride in the car with her father as they started to make their way down the famous long walk on the grounds of Windsor Castle on their way to St. George's Chapel. come back, the procession and the vows. Stay with us. Sophie and her father arrived.
Dearly beloved, we are gathered here in the sight of God and in the face of this congregation to join together this man and this woman in holy matrimony, which is an honorable estate instituted of God himself, signifying unto us the mystical union that is betwixt Christ and his church, which holy estate Christ adorned and beautified with his presence, and first miracle that he wrought in Cana of Galilee, and is commended in Holy Writ to be honorable among all men, and therefore is not by any to be enterprised nor taken in hand, unadvisedly, lightly or wantonly, but reverently, discreetly, soberly, and in the fear of God, duly considering the causes for which matrimony was ordained. First, it was ordained for the increase of mankind according to the will of God, and that children might be brought up in the fear and nurture of the Lord, and to the praise of his holy name. Secondly, it was ordained that the natural instincts and affections implanted by God should be hallowed and directed aright, that those who are called of God to this holy estate should continue therein in pureness of living. Thirdly, it was ordained for the mutual society, help, and comfort that the one ought to have of the other, both in prosperity and adversity. Into which holy estate these two persons present come now to be joined. Therefore, if any man can show any just cause why they may not lawfully be joined together, let him now speak, or else hereafter forever hold his peace. I require and charge you both, as ye will answer at the dreadful day of judgment, when the secrets of all hearts shall be disclosed, that if either of you know any impediment, why ye may not be lawfully joined together in matrimony, ye do now confess it. For be ye well assured that so many as are coupled together otherwise than God's word doth allow, are not joined together by God, neither is their matrimony lawful. Edward, wilt thou have this woman to thy wedded wife, to live together according to God's law in the holy estate of matrimony? Wilt thou love her, comfort her, honor and keep her in sickness and in health, and forsaking all other, keep thee only unto her, so long as ye both shall live?
I will.
Sophie, wilt thou have this man to thy wedded husband, to live together according to God's law in the holy estate of matrimony? Wilt thou love him, comfort him, honor and keep him in sickness and in health, and forsaking all other, keep thee only unto him, so long as ye both shall live.
I will.
Who giveth this woman to be married to this man? I, Edward Anthony Richard Louis,
I, Edward Anthony Richard Louis,
take thee, Sophie Helen,
take thee, Sophie Helen,
to my wedded wife,
to my wedded wife,
to have and to hold,
to have and to hold,
from this day forward,
from this day forward,
for better, for worse,
for better, for worse,
for richer, for poorer,
for richer, for poorer,
in sickness and in health,
in sickness and in health,
to love and to cherish,
to love and to cherish,
till death us do part,
till death us do part,
according to God's holy law,
according to God's holy law,
and thereto
and thereto
I give thee my troth.
I give thee my troth.
I, Sophie Helen,
I, Sophie Helen,
take thee, Edward Anthony Richard Louis,
take thee, Edward Anthony Richard Louis,
to my wedded husband,
to my wedded husband,
to have and to hold,
to have and to hold,
from this day forward,
from this day forward,
for better, for worse,
better or worse,
for richer, for poorer,
for richer or poorer,
in sickness and in health,
in sickness and in health,
to love, cherish, and to obey,
to love, cherish, and obey,
till death us do part,
till death us do part,
according to God's holy law,
according to God's holy law,
and thereto
and thereto
I give thee my troth.
I give thee my troth.
Those whom God hath joined together, let no man put asunder. Forasmuch as Edward and Sophie have consented together in holy wedlock, and have witnessed the same before God and this company, and thereto have given and pledged their troth either to other, and have declared the same by giving and receiving of a ring and by joining of hands, I pronounce that they be man and wife together, in the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Ghost. Amen.
Still ahead, the crowds gathered outside St. George's get their first look at the newlyweds, and the new Countess talks about the inevitable comparisons between herself and Princess Diana. As with all weddings, the bride and her gown was the focus of the event. Like Princess Diana and the Duchess of York before her, Sophie was wearing the creation of a relatively unknown designer, Samantha Shaw. The dress was sleek, simple, and sophisticated. Long and fitted, it was made of ivory silk organza, hand-dyed, consisting of a coat over a corseted V-neck dress. More than 300,000 cut glass and pearl beads decorated the train. Sophie also wore a diamond tiara, as well as a black and white pearl necklace and earrings designed for her by Prince Edward. The bride and groom both chose plain gold bands for their wedding rings. Appropriately, the gold came from the Prince Edward mine in Wales. Prince Charles was in charge of making sure the rings made it to the chapel. And perhaps proving that royal weddings can be the same as weddings everywhere else, Edward struggled to get the ring on Sophie's finger. He had to wiggle it a bit. Since it was an evening wedding, protocol prevented female guests from wearing hats. It turned out many decided to wear feathers instead. Everyone from the Queen herself to her daughter, Princess Anne, to her sister, Princess Margaret, to this woman wearing probably one of the wackier headpieces to ever grace Gothic St. George's Chapel at Windsor Castle. St. George's may be smaller than the London churches where Prince Edward's brothers and sister married, but it is every bit as splendid. The Queen's father and grandparents are buried in the chapel, as are many British monarchs before them. And it was here that the royal family held the funerals of the Duke and Duchess of Windsor. But because of the scandal caused by the former king's marriage to the divorced American Wallis Simpson, the two are buried elsewhere in the Windsor estate, side by side. This wedding is the first time in over a century that the child of a British monarch was married at St. George's. As is customary, only hours before the wedding, the Queen named her youngest son, Prince Edward, the Earl of Wessex, which means Sophie Rhys-Jones is now Her Royal Highness, the Countess of Wessex. At the office, she will be known simply as Sophie Wessex. They're the latest royal sensation, the setting the historic St. George's Chapel in Windsor Castle. After taking their vows, Prince Edward, the new Earl of Wessex, and his bride, Sophie Rhys-Jones, the new Countess of Wessex, made their way past 600 guests inside the chapel. After leaving the chapel, Sophie took a photo with her new family, the royal family. Then Prince Edward and Countess Sophie took a carriage ride through the grounds of Windsor Castle. As we watch, let's listen to Prince Edward in an interview with Britain's independent television news. He talks about the planning of the wedding.
It's a castle that has always been a home and a family home. It's a wonderful place, got a wonderful atmosphere, and a tremendous sense of history. It's been here for over 900 years and been continuously occupied during all that time. And the chapel itself is just a fantastic location. It just seemed to be the ideal place for having a wedding that was of slightly more family nature.
You had to strike this balance between the fact that you are royals, it is a public affair, but you wanted it to have all these elements that you wanted yourselves.
Having taken the decision that it was going to be a family wedding, that it was going to be at St. George's, it was then trying to balance that up with what was then the huge strength of feeling that was coming from the general public. We were able to have some 8,000 members of the public come and actually be a part of it.
And many of them are local people, which is a very nice touch.
Absolutely, yes. I mean, first priority was to local people, but we've also had applications from all over the United Kingdom and indeed over the Commonwealth as well and beyond. So it's extraordinary how people want to feel it, be a part of it. It'll be far more intimate than anything that's been before.
How did the decision about hats come about? Ladies wearing no hats.
Well, basically because we decided to go for an afternoon wedding. That was really on the basis that those are the weddings that sort of stuck in our minds, the ones that we enjoyed the most. We thought that would be a better format of having it in the afternoon and going into an evening function. Well, then, of course, you've got the problem, are people going to turn up to wear hats in church, and then what are they going to wear for the dinner afterwards? It seems a bit strange when we're sitting around in hats afterwards. So it just seemed to be simpler just to have the whole affair in basically evening wear, so the ladies didn't have to wear hats, and there was never a problem what they're going to have to do with them afterwards.
And who used the word continental style, the description continental style? Was that you?
No, it wasn't. No, we never used the continental style. Unfortunately, there have been so many sort of rumours and bits of misinformation that have been going around. It has confused some people, and all sorts of bits of misinformation have ended up in the public domain, which confused all the guests as well, despite the information being very clear and precise.
In families up and down the country, one can conjure up these images of these decisions about weddings being made as they sit around the kitchen table and sort of thrashing these matters out. How did it happen in your case?
Much the same, although it wasn't a kitchen table.
But there were a lot of discussions about things.
Oh gosh, I mean, inevitably on anything like this. I'm told that the three most stressful things you can do in life are get married, move or set up house, and change jobs.
Dare I ask you what qualities you think you both bring to this relationship?
What makes it work is the fact that we both get along extremely well. We share a lot of very common interests, and we have had in many sort of similar experiences in terms of our sort of business careers as such, and so we can help and understand each other and support each other, which is what we've done over the last few years, which is why we feel that we'll now be able to take that step and one step further in terms of sharing those responsibilities and other aspects of life. We manage to have a good laugh about things most of the time. And we happen to love each other, which is the most important thing.
A great sense of humour, very important.
It's very important in this way.
Do royal couples worry about things like the best man's speeches and about misplacing the ring and all that sort of thing, or is that much more highly organised?
I don't know about highly organised. There's always human fallibility, so we'll just have to wait and see, won't we? As you know, with anything to do with this sort of business, whether it's the theatre or television or anything else, the things that most people remember most are the things that go wrong.
I know the feeling very well.
So who knows? We'll just have to wait and see what happens.
Royals. NBC's Keith Miller joins us now from Windsor Castle with a look at who attended and who did not. Hi, Keith. Any noticeable exceptions to the invitation list?
Well, Soledad, I think the two most glaring, of course, were Sarah Ferguson, who was not invited. Her ex-husband, Prince Andrew, was there along with her two daughters. And also Camilla Parker Bowles, the longtime lover of Prince Charles. I am told by reliable sources that she indeed did get an invitation, but decided not to attend, primarily not to take the focus away from the young couple. Also in the audience, the Sultan of Brunei attended the wedding, Lord Andrew Lloyd Webber, and of course Sir David Frost, and many members of the royal family. This was mostly, and it was supposed to be actually, an intimate, close-knit family wedding. It grew and grew to 600 people inside the chapel, most of them minor royalty, business associates, and friends of the family.
We now know that they're going to be known as the Earl and Countess of Wessex. Were they well received when they left the church and actually mingled among their people?
Absolutely. It's interesting because this was not, Soledad, a state occasion, so there was not the pomp and circumstance that we've seen in past royal weddings. But still, lining the streets of the town of Windsor, tens of thousands of people waving British Union Jacks and cheering the young couple on. They went around the city for about 15 minutes, a little tour, primarily for them to receive the congratulations of the public, and then go back into Windsor Castle. For them, a flawless day, an idea that they would somehow have a modern wedding in the trappings of this old monarchy, and I think they pulled it off.
Incredibly enough, the information about the dress was pretty much kept a secret. Same with the honeymoon. Nobody really knows as of yet where they're going.
Well, that's exactly correct, and they've kept it a secret. There were several secrets on this, and the best kept one, of course, was the dress itself. Nobody had seen it or heard about it. A lot of speculation. It was spectacular, judging by the comments of the people in the crowd and from observers, and they were saying that it was just the right touch. Not too overdone, but very elegant, and at the same time, highlighted the beauty of Sophia very, very well. And at the same point, we don't know about the honeymoon yet. I suspect that some of the royal rat pack, as they're called, the journalists who chase royal stories, will be on the case. But so far it is a secret, and we expect them to be off jetting to a honeymoon at some point shortly.
Is it? Soon after Sophie arrived on the royal scene, one British tabloid described her as identical. During a recent interview with the BBC, Sophie talked about the comparisons made between herself and Princess Diana. She also explained how she felt about meeting the royal family for the first time.
For anyone, meeting boyfriends, parents and family is difficult enough anyway, but for you, obviously, it was very difficult and different.
Well, I wouldn't say it was difficult, but it was probably slightly more scary than it might otherwise have been. But as Edward said before I met them, don't worry, they're not that scary, they won't bite.
Your life, Sophie, must have changed dramatically from the time that first headline was written. Describe what happened the day after.
It was quite funny because we drove into work, and I remember coming out and seeing this wall of cameras and photographers and journalists and people shouting, and it was surreal. It really sort of took my breath away. And then over the years, with people running, I mean, the most worrying thing is when people start running at you, and you know that they're not going to hurt you, and in your mind you're saying, you know, they're not there to hurt you. It wouldn't be in their interests to do such a thing. They just want a photograph, and I've tried to be as accommodating as possible, in the thought that once you give them a photograph, they'll then go away. And when I was driving, I used to spend a lot of time looking in the rearview mirror, which obviously is not particularly safe. And then after that, there was a couple of occasions where I had near misses with people possibly stepping out into the road, or cars coming in the opposite direction where I wasn't concentrating. And of course you do stupid things like trying to jump lights in an effort to get away from them. And I didn't want to be responsible for somebody else, you know, being hurt.
It was the era, that was very much the era when the freelance journalists were completely out of control. There was a huge market in photographs, and there were too many people chasing that money, and they would do the most ridiculous things to be able to get their photographs.
It is worrying to hear that, but it also obviously brings back the obvious memory of the tragic accident involving, you know, Princess Diana. I suppose in some ways, you know, is that why it changed? Because it couldn't get any worse. I mean, that was horrific.
It was. I mean, for most people who know anything of this, it was the only way that it was going to end. That was the tragedy of it. It was only a matter of time before something really very nasty happened. And the amazing thing is that it took that long before something did happen. The fact that it should have been quite so horrendous as it was deeply depressing.
in some of the papers, you are now being compared with Princess Diana. That must be worrying because of what she went through, but also you want to be your own person.
Yes. I mean, the comparison is something that I've always had. I mean, I've often in the past done double takes when I've seen a picture of what I've thought was either me or Princess of Wales, and actually from a distance not knowing which one it was until I've come up close.
But how do you feel being compared? Princess Diana?
Well, I know, as I've said in the past, I think, you know, on a sort of an aesthetic basis, I don't think anybody can be unhappy at being compared to somebody such as her. She was incredibly beautiful. But, you know, it's two very different people. She had her own personality, and I have mine.
It's not helpful. It's not accurate. It's something, again, which the media have created themselves. Because, I mean, I think, utterly cynically speaking, the Princess of Wales was a huge money spinner for them. And it's certainly something that we've never encouraged, and we certainly would not want to encourage, because, to be perfectly honest, we don't want to be involved in anything like the same sort of situation. We don't want to create the same situation at all. And again, we don't want to even begin to try and fill that particular gap. You can't. The Princess of Wales was a completely unique person, and what she did was tremendous. But you know, the emotions that she set in motion couldn't be controlled in any way. But again, you know, that's gone. It's past. It's happened. We're now moving into a different era.
But in some ways, how much control do you have over that? Because when she tried to be private, there was, you know, there was no control. I mean, in some ways, it's up to the editors and the people taking the photographs.
It is. It's also up to the people who buy the papers.
Yes.
I mean, it's you know, it's a terrible thing to say. I mean, we all buy papers. If we buy the papers, we're tantamount to supporting what they do.
It took you a long time, 6 years. A lot of people are saying it took a while. Did you feel under pressure, say, from the press by saying, you know, when will you ask?
The only pressure I felt was every time that they insisted on asking the question, it just delayed it for a bit longer.
Did you ever think, Sophie, is he going to ask me?
Well, you see, I knew what the tactic was. I knew that every time the press asked, he would say, you know, it's none of anybody's business. Well, I mean, you know, people have asked us this question, and I mean, I can genuinely say that I don't think I was ready before then anyway. There is an adjustment to go through, and in fact, actually, we had the best of both worlds. You know, we were enjoying a relationship together, and we were building our businesses, and, you know, it was absolutely fine. I didn't really see much of a reason to change the situation, and but of course we have, and we're very glad that we have.
Edward and Sophie's 6-year courtship prompted a lot of public curiosity about when they would marry. Now that question is being replaced by another question. When are they planning to begin a family?
There has to be a moment just after you got married where you have to be able to enjoy that married life, because once children come along, it is never the same again. So I think that I think that we'll have a decent period as being able to enjoy married life and the house, the grounds, and everything else.
Well, contrary to popular opinion, we haven't actually ever lived with each other before, so you know, we want to get used to living with each other. You know, there'll still be an awful lot of things to do in the house, and in the garden, and obviously with our respective businesses, and to go straight into, you know, extending the family. You know, we're not intending to immediately, so I think everybody they can just wait patiently.
Well, finally, I must ask you, you know, what are the challenges for Sophie V? What are your sort of main challenges?
I think in the first instance is making our marriage work.